joining us now, Emilie Callan. She is in Rome. She is one of the auditors in the Synod and, as we said, is participating in the small language groups. So Emilie, how are you? We have lots of questions for you, all of us, but I'm going to start. You're one of the few young people that are participating on the inside. Most of us are not on the inside. So what can you tell us about that inside experience that we're not getting in the news?
Well, I think first of all, it would be, the first thing that you wouldn't be able to see from the outside is the atmosphere, the way that people are interacting with each other. I would say that already after just 1 week of being together, young people with the bishops and the experts, there's a lot of joy. We find a lot of joy of being together. Conversations are easy. People are getting more and more comfortable, and so there's a lot of freedom to speak if we feel that we want to speak about something. And I think it's a very convivial and fraternal environment inside the Synod.
Emilie, we've been talking a lot about the small language groups. I was wondering, which group are you in, and how did those delegates in those groups get chosen?
That's a good question. So I'm in the French group. I'm in French group A. There's about close to 20 of us. I'm one of 2 auditors that are inside the Circuler Minorie that I am in, as well as one more expert, or 2 more experts, that are there with the rest of the Synod Fathers. I'm not quite sure how we were put together. I'm assuming that they tried to mix things up a bit. I'm the only North American with Bishop Luxir of Sherbrooke, and then there's some Europeans, there's bishops from the Middle East, bishops from Africa, and Italy as well.
Emilie, for the small groups, were there guidelines issued, and what is the real purpose of the small groups? Do you know what that is? And how would you gauge the discussions? How are the discussions going so far?
So the purpose of the small group, first of all, is to delve a little deeper into the questions that were perhaps brought up, or the issues that were brought up in the interventions in the Synod Hall. The first day that we met in small group, we had to go over the rules. There was a little bit of confusion. We didn't fully understand what the process would be, but with the help of some of the secretaries that are assisting the Synod of Bishops who are there with us inside of the small groups, they were able to help us through. So we had to vote for the moderator. We then had to vote for the rapporteur. And so these are the 2 that are obviously moderating the conversation and then also taking down all the notes and making reports of what is being said inside of our small groups. And really as I was saying, there's a lot of respect and freedom to speak. So everyone has time to speak. The moderator has been very good to make sure that everyone has time to say what they need to say. And if there's any kind of confusion because there are words that some people don't understand as well, or vocabulary that's used that might not express fully what someone is trying to say, then there's always time to clarify those things. And it's actually quite beautiful how the Synod Fathers, with us as well, the auditors and the experts, how we're able to come to a greater understanding of what each of the members in the group are trying to share. And so I would say there's a lot of freedom, and the conversations are very deep and very edifying.
Now, Emilie, a lot of people are wondering whether there are enough young people at the Synod, even if they're allowed to speak and if they're being listened to. You're on the inside. What's been your experience so far?
So I would say that inside the Circuler Minorie, we are able to speak very freely. And I think the Synod Fathers, with the help of the moderator and the rapporteur, are making sure that young people have a chance to speak and share their opinion. And this is something that I'm hearing from other Synod delegates as well, that in their group, this is the same situation. So there hasn't been one moment where I felt like I had to hold back or where I didn't have space to speak. So that's really one beautiful thing. And on the question of whether or not there are enough young people, I would say it's already very significant that there are 34 of us inside the Synod, and so I think that we're making our voice heard and our presence felt.
Emilie, you were at the pre-Synod back in March, and you came up with a really important document that highlighted a lot of the issues of concern for the 300 young people that were there. things like, the role of women in the church. I mean, you call for a greater kind of understanding, a deeper understanding of that. Are you confident through your experience that the issues that were raised at the pre-synod are being listened to or being considered at this synod among the bishops?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that the pre-synodal document is quoted very often in the Instrumentum Laboris. And so I think a lot of the topics that were raised in the pre-synodal document are naturally coming up in our discussions during this synod. So there are questions about vocation, which part 2 looks at very closely, vocation and accompaniment and what a good spiritual mentor looks like. So we've been talking a lot about that, especially this week. In terms of the situation of young people, we've definitely talked about sexuality, technology, the abuse scandals in the church. These are all things that came up in the pre-synodal document, and that, of course, we're now looking at here. In terms of the question of women in the church, it's not something that's been talked about as often as maybe some other topics have. However, it has come up, and some of the religious sisters have shared their thoughts on that, wanting to have greater roles in the church, or that they're more present, and that not just relegated to maybe smaller positions. But we are looking at it, and so we'll see if perhaps in the coming days it's something that comes up more in our small group discussions.
Okay, so Emilie, I asked this of Allison last week, and I want to know your take on it too. You're there with the Pope, with bishops, with the Synod Fathers, with all these delegates. It's an exciting group. What's been the highlight of all that for you?
Well, I would say that I definitely have not gotten used to seeing Pope Francis welcoming the delegates and the Synod Fathers when we arrive for our morning or afternoon session. So he always takes time to greet people as he comes in. And just a couple days ago, I saw the Pope being offered some mate, which, as we know, is one of his favorite Argentinian drinks. I got to ride the elevator with the Pope, and it was a very awkward situation because no one really spoke in the elevator. So it was a very normal elevator ride like you would have with anyone else back home. So there are these little moments that we get to experience with Pope Francis in a very normal and ordinary way, and it's just quite beautiful. So we feel like he's one of us.
Thank you, Emilie. So good to see you and hear your voice. We hope to talk to you again maybe in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, and looking forward to being able to share more about this wonderful experience in Rome.